All right, we're a couple of minutes after our start time. Let's go ahead and I'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. We're minus Keith today. He let me know 2 or 3 days ago that he was going to be unable to make the meeting today. Josh, you can put the agenda back up.
Do that 1 second.
Okay, and the question will be, do we have any additions, subtractions, comments on the agenda? Okay, if not, I'm going to consider the agenda unanimously approved. I don't think we need to take a vote on it. The amendments, of course, have been previously distributed. Do we have any comments, changes, additions to the minutes for the last meeting, June 4th meeting?
I agree with them as submitted.
Okay. Any other comments, questions on them? Okay. Again, I don't know that we need to take a vote on it. We'll just say that they're unanimously approved. Let me check them off here. The next item on the agenda is the public comments. I don't see any public members on here. We did have, I don't see him now, Greg Ellison. If Greg is welcome to question anytime he wants to, in case I forget him at the end of the meeting, to allow for any questions from the media. Okay, let's go on and start with the unfinished business. Now, before I get too far into it, there's a list of the various topics for our bylaws effort. And my intention is to go as far down that list as we can go, if necessary, to all the way to the end, but I'm sure that that's not going to all the way to the end of the topics that we've got to consider. I'm sure that's not going to happen, but the intention is to go step by step and get as much progress as we can go on each of those items, at least get started in a particular direction, and if we can at all possibly do that. The first item on the agenda is the C04 status, and very simply, that's our own committee resolution that we had prepared an amendment to and submitted to Camilla for submission to the board of directors for approval of a revision to our own operating instructions resolution. That did in fact go to a first reading at the last board meeting and would be up for a second reading at the next board meeting, which I don't have the date, but of course is coming up here in this month. There were no comments, questions, or anything like that on the proposed amendment at the board meeting. So that's the status of our CO4 amendment. Now, moving on to the more substantive materials, and let me turn around and get my materials in front of me so I can get disorganized quickly. First item is the ARC proposal, or ARC question, really, bylaws provision ARC question, where the bylaws group expressed concern that the provision in the bylaws may be a conflict, or may in some manner conflict with the declaration of restrictions authority given to the ARC committee. And that was approved for discussion with Jeremy Tucker, and I had a Microsoft Teams meeting with him. It was a week ago today, or a week ago yesterday, I believe, I'm sorry. And we talked for approximately 20 minutes about the various questions that we had previously submitted. What I did, what Josh has up here on the screen now, is send everyone an email summary of that conversation that I had with him. And the basic end result is he's going to send us a suggested or proposed suggested wording for that provision that's in the bylaws. He said that although it's a standard kind of bylaws provision for these kinds of situations, the one that's in there now with regard to our art committee can be a matter of confusion because it's somewhat imprecise. That's effectively the bottom line, the end result, if I can say it that way, of the conversation. I went on to discuss some specific points, and I'm not going to try to go over them again. He did give a background, though, of the reason why we would have a final authority type of provision for an art committee or a committee like an art committee, and somewhat of the background of why such a provision would exist. And he also had kind of an interesting story about a situation in which an art committee or similar committee kind of went astray, and what are they going to do now kind of situation. There was one other comment that I did not put in there, and I meant to write it down, and I've got it written down somewhere and don't know where I put it, but that's beside the point. Hang on a second. No, anyhow, at any rate, where we stand on the art issue is that the attorney will be providing us with some suggested wording for what's there now. So does anyone have any comments, questions about where we are, what's taken place, about what Mr. Tucker had to say about, in my words, as I put it on the email, what he had to say about the ARC situation? Anybody have any questions or comments about that?
I do not.
Okay.
I have none.
Okay, just as a personal comment, I found his comments about the reason why you would have a committee placed in an authority position that from which there is no appeal, if I think is the right way to put it. And the intention is to look at the committee as focused on that particular activity, property use activity, as opposed to a board of directors, which has to focus across the board of all concerns of the association, all the operational and policy concerns, and also be potentially subject to making spur of the moment decisions, or even, unfortunately, decisions that are may have some element of favoritism to them. So that's a reason why, or a particular reason why, you want to isolate that responsibility. I found that rather persuasive myself as a reasoning why you would have that. And it kind of shined a light on the whole situation for me. And that's just a personal comment on my part. Okay, let's move along. Now we're going to get to some areas we need to start making some decisions on. Decisions as to where we're going to go, how we're going to go, kind of thing. And the next item is the maximum votes that can be cast provision that's in the petition sections in particular. Let me make a quick comment, and then I want to make sure that we all start getting our own thoughts on where we're going to go. Perhaps in that max number of votes package that I sent out a couple of weeks ago, I did not fully express that this is a policy decision. It's not, there's no necessarily right or wrong way to go with this. And in my package that I sent out, there may have been the appearance of leaning at or toward or favoring the provision that's suggested by the bylaws work group, and that is the number of signatures should be computed based on the maximum votes in the association without any regard to eligibility at any particular time. That's an unfortunate possibility of reading into what I set out. But this is really a policy decision. I think there are two, and others may have different views on this, and we want to be able to explore this, two different policy decisions. One policy decision would be the maximum number of votes without regard to voter eligibility at the time of the petition submittal. And that would be basing on the number of signatures on the entire population, member population of the association, which is the population that will be affected by any amendment to the bylaws in particular, or any petition. You can expect any petition to be dealing with something that's going to affect all of the members of the association. The bylaws, for example, are applicable to everyone in the association, regardless of what your voting status is at any given time. The other approach is that the number of signatures is based on those who have fulfilled all of their obligations to the association at the time of the submittal of the petition. In this case, it means they're eligible to vote, which is the major element of association obligation then is the payment of the annual charge. And it's those people who have the most right, if I can put it that way, to be able to say yes or no, we want this petition to go forward, and yes by signing it. So those are the two, as I see it, the two policy decisions or policy approaches that we can assemble or we can take. And again, that may not have come clear enough in this package of information that I sent around. What I sent around was a review of what it had been or would have been as a continuation of the prior to 2008 bylaws, as well as looking at the current bylaws and how they can be interpreted with regard to the number of signatures required. And I also, at the very end, put into actual words what a proposal would look like if the proposal from the Bylaws Work Committee is the one we proceed with. I could also have very well have put in wording for a proposal that took the other policy approach, and that's the eligible to vote approach. And then that would simply be say something to the effect the number of the percentage is based on the number of votes eligible on the day that the petition is filed. So it's not that hard to figure out what it said. That's enough from me. Where we are here now is we need to be talking about, thinking about, and making a decision of what direction do we want to go and why do we want to go that way. Do we want to go the maximum number of votes interpretation, that it's all of the votes that day in the association, or the interpretation that it's the eligible votes that day of the submittal of the petition. At any rate, that's I want to open this up for our discussion. We need to get aimed at figuring out where we're going to go, why we're going to go that way, and then proceed to act on that. So anyway, but I'm going to sit here and be quiet. I hope.
Okay. Maximum number of votes is a very clear, precise way of everybody knowing how many votes it's going to take if you want to submit a petition. The other is a variable that can change. So why don't we go with something that is maximum and make it real clear? You can find out how many votes are eligible if you want to submit a petition. You immediately get an answer of the number that you need for 10%. Otherwise, it's a variable, and I don't think it makes a lot of difference. I think we're more tilting windmills than by using a variable eligible as opposed to maximum. That's my thought. I just think maximum is a simple, clear, straightforward way of doing it.
Okay. The wording in what I'll call a proposed amendment that goes the direction that Bob is referencing refers back to a section of the bylaws that encompasses all votes within the association. That's the intention of the reference back to, I think it's 301A, something like that. That reference back is intended to mean it's all of the votes within the association. Yeah, and at the bottom there, in black, it's the as referenced in section 301A. That section effectively picks up all votes in the association. Okay, any other comments?
I've done in the past month, look at this backward forward, and I'm kind of in agreement with Bob of his feeling. I've tested it both ways in my mind, did some research on it, and I'm not looking to flip a coin here, but doing what's fairest for the community. I'm kind of leaning with the maximum number of votes. It's my mindset's exactly how Bob feels, to be quite honest. It's just, and when I had spoken with you, I guess back a few weeks ago, it references back to that you have to be mindset of looking at the other areas in the bylaws that it, reflects well upon them as well, when we had our discussion last time.
Yeah, there is at least one other section other than the 4.07s that pick that up. I'm not sure. I think I probably picked them all up, but that would need to be checked as well to make sure that we've got the same wording everywhere.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with the consistency of making sure our wording is correct everywhere.
Yeah.
I also think that, as Bob said, the clearer, the easier, the better, with going with the maximum available votes, not wording it with eligible voters in there, because that could change every time you have something to present, and then somebody could say, well, only, a certain amount of those members were eligible to vote. Now, it is up to all of us individually to make sure we're eligible to vote whenever anything comes up. But I don't think we need to, in situations like this, cap it, that it just pick the maximum, forget how the word, the maximum amount that we can do, regardless of eligibility.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there are at least two ways, two foundations. One is the issue that's a fluctuating number if you go on eligible to vote, and if you're going to put out a petition, you want to submit it as early as after or on the beginning of the fiscal year as you can. That's going to be your lowest number of votes required on an eligible to vote basis. That's going to be the lowest number of signatures required that you're going to run into. And if you've submitted it near the end of the fiscal year, you're going to run into the highest possible number of signatures required. So if somebody wants to submit a petition, if it's at all possible, they'd want to submit it as early in the fiscal year as they could. The other, and the one that I look add as a foundation is the what I expressed as the a petition can be expected to be applicable to something that is going to be binding in one way or another on all members of the association. And that should be, the number of signatures required should have a foundation there toward all of the association. And that's to me, it was my primary thinking on this issue. And again, I want to make sure that we all understand that we're dealing with a policy. We're not dealing with something that's got a right or wrong answer to it. And I hope did not lead people astray in that package that I distributed by not giving enough attention or not focusing on the fact that it is a policy decision. It's not something you can go look and find the right or wrong answer to it. Either way has an argument to it, and we've discussed that.
Right. Josh has his hand up.
Okay, I'm not looking at hands, so I see it here now. Okay, Josh.
Can I make a real quick point, Jim?
Sure.
Yeah, on the fluctuating eligible numbers, it was of course an anomaly, but last year with COVID, when we deferred payments, we had about 1,000 less eligible voters than normal. Mm-hmm. So that's how much in a strange year that number can fluctuate.
Yeah.
And that's a good point too. You know, you never know again if we're going to have a situation where the board makes a decision that they can defer payments, but then if you have a voting thing that needs to happen by a certain date and they're not done paying, does that make them ineligible even though they've already paid a payment or something in good faith? You know what I mean? So that could be tricky.
Yeah. The other part of it is 10% is such a low threshold. It shouldn't be an issue to anybody. I mean, if 10% can't agree on something, it can't be important.
I'm not sure if I should or need to say anything. There was apparently something of a struggle to get to 10%, whichever way you look at it, on a referendum that's been kind of a hot button issue for a number of years. So I don't, anyhow, I think we just as well leave that alone. That's history, water over the dam, under the bridge, whatever, and better left alone. Yes. All right, let me try to summarize where we are now. I believe we essentially decided that we're going to go with the wording that's in the last part of the package that was sent around, where I appended or I added into the wording that Josh has got up there, that wording would be added to the each of those provisions. And I'm prepared to say that we should consider this our proposal, at least our tentative proposal. We can come back and review all of these at a future date, but consider this our current proposal and set it aside and continue on to others for the time being. Is that a acceptable approach? We can vote if we think we need to. I don't know that we need to, but perhaps at the future, when we come around to finalizing everything we do, I think we will need to do voting on proposal by proposal. But at this point in time, I think we can consider this our current proposal to be finally approved prior to submittal to the board. Any comments on that? Objections to doing it that way?
No.
That's fine.
Okay,
It's fine with me.
all right, then let's go ahead with the next subject on our list here. That's the search committee. Uh, the item that's been circulated with the other materials for this meeting was that paper that lists we went out to the 3 committees for comments on the future of the search committee, and Josh has it up here on the screen now. We went out to communications, elections, and the search committee itself, and asked them the questions that are indicated under each committee section on this response sheet. We did not have the search committee response at our last meeting. Just in summary form, the Communications Advisory Committee saw themselves as participating in communicating information. Where are we here? The committee sees its role as communicating a reminder of the time of requirements, and then it goes on to some other information about possibly residence academy, including information there. The elections committee pretty well didn't want to have anything to do with the search process. They considered it to be inappropriate in the sense that it may lead towards some concern of favoritism toward particular individuals or particular candidates. So they wanted to not be associated with the search process. Now, after that, in fact, it came out, I got the copy of the report, I think was on my email when I went into the email after the last meeting. The search committee did respond, and their response was included in a search committee report. Now, the search committee report is a requirement of Resolution 509. After the search process is complete, the search committee in that resolution is to submit a report to the board regarding what took place in the search process, and there's some kind of an outline in the resolution as to what to be reporting on. I have summarized out of that report the 4 items that you see there at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, under the summary of comments. One was simply delete the search committee. The membership recruitment problem was noted, and that it's expected that it would continue. The other next 2 items, 2 and 3, deal more with specific parts of the resolution as they deal with candidacy applications. One is to remove the search committee as an intermediary for candidate applications. That the bylaws say that the committee is to get the applications and pass them on to the secretary, and that recommendation is to remove that requirement. It doesn't in and of itself, of course, mean remove the search committee. Third one is not related to the search committee. It's simply recommending delete the provision that if there are not 2 or more candidates for vacancies, it can be the candidacy interval can be extended. And the reason given there is that there's no historical use, which is, as I recall, quite true. Final item is kind of a suggestion as to what to do instead of having a search committee. That's the way I read it. And that would be for the Communications Advisory Committee could assist staff in distributing information regarding becoming a candidate. And I don't have the report in front of me, but I believe that the report, as I recall, made some references to the staff, and I may even reference to Josh in particular, I don't remember. but the staff putting out various communications, public communications, internal communications regarding vacancies and the manner on the board and the manner on which you can apply for candidacy in the upcoming election, the timeframes and so forth. And that fourth one makes reference to that. And effectively, I think it can be understood that that kind of means go that way instead of having a search committee. Right now, we're at a decision as to where to go with the search committee. The search committee itself made the specific recommendation to get rid of it. That's literally what was said in that report, to delete the committee. Okay. I don't want to talk any further. I want to open this up for discussion as to where we think we should be going with the issue of to retain the search committee. If so, or if not, we'll have to talk about that. If so, well, what do we do? What do we do there? But at any rate, I want to open it up. Well, where do we need to go with the search committee issue?
Well,
I've had a lot of thoughts in the past month. How long do you have?
Don't be afraid to go first.
How long do you have, Jim? A year?
yeah.
And you discussed it over an hour last phone call.
I was going to ask a question. I was going to say, and if Lisa doesn't mind sharing, I would, as someone who thought about running for a board
I
position,
appreciate you bringing it up.
but I'm coming from the angle of the search committee.
Yep.
Did the search committee interact with you as a potential candidate at all? Like, what did
So
that
I'm glad
committee
you brought
have
me up.
anything to do with you deciding to run?
No.
You know what I mean? To know whether or not the search committee is useful. You know, what is it
I'll
doing?
bring it up to you. I think from, it's no surprise I discussed it with Jim. I was born and raised in Long Island, New York. Politics in the town I was, that's completely different public entity. This is an HOA. Don't want to confuse the two. The differences that I see, I basically just downloaded a form off the internet, handed it into the community center, really had no involvement other than just waiting to see when I'm being named a candidate, minus a few questions that I had just trying to prepare,
Okay.
just of gathering information. I felt, even though it's just different in an association. I'm not like in any clubs or other than joining the bylaws. So I really didn't have anyone that I knew here in the past that have ever been on a committee or has been a director. So I didn't.
Or that they would have.
I didn't have anybody.
Oh, she's a person. Let's go talk to her. And
I didn't have anybody to discuss this with. So I felt from that alone, different from where you're involved with the community that you lived in and born and raised in, it's a completely different scenario from a public entity to this HOA or any HOA. I think my mother's was previously an association for years, Long Island, New York, but it was only like 450, 500 homes, I believe. But it wasn't set up like the way we have our association. It wasn't large enough. So the way they did their votes, they voted that day. They didn't have a voting thing, mail and ballot, because it was a smaller association, but everybody lived there full time. I don't want to get off track from this, but from a public entity, it's completely different than an HOA, I say. And if you don't know anyone here, you're basically just waiting to be named a candidate. So if you're not reaching out and you don't have any questions, other than a question for like, all right, when can you go ahead and order your signs? Or obviously, you have to be named a candidate. The only time that I saw any reference was when I believe that one of the two of the search committee had sent an email into Jim just about, seeing if anybody wanted to join to be a candidate. But I believe I had already put in my application way before that. So I didn't have anyone reach out to me. I did it of my own accord.
So then what I'm hearing then is the current search committee if one of their duties is to recruit and talk
Right.
through the whole process with a potential candidate,
Right.
they're going to have to be very involved in the community, and they're
Correct.
only going to know others who
Correct.
have already been involved in
Correct.
committees and events and things like that and are known, you
Yes.
know. But if nobody, but there are a lot of, as we can tell in this swing of things, there are a lot of newer people
Yes.
interested who
Mhm.
may or may not initially even be a full-time resident. It could be a part-timer like me right now. We are slowly making it full-time. We're getting there. But you know what I mean? That so looking at it from the search committee perspective, I think it limits them if we're only relying on the popular people to be known and talked to.
Right, 'cause you're only going to see the people that are living here full time.
Right.
If you're here, and if you're a full time on the search committee, it doesn't matter whether you're full time or not. But let's say the scenario is you live here full time, you're on the search committee, and you're scoping out. Most likely, you're going to come and run. Depends on somebody, you know, if they're involved with activities. It depends on what that pool. I really just think the reach has to, if there was continuing a search committee, I think that it really just has to be absorbed, you know, with. It's just the communication of it. You have to make
Right.
sure
I
that
think
you're pulling from all different directions. Like you scope out the people in the tenant, like the activity area, then the pools, and you know, the pools are seasonal. So you're not going to see a lot of those people unless they go to the sports bar in the winter. What interaction are you allowed to have? There's so many different variables that I've thought of in the past months, even thinking about that. And then you don't want it to look like you're biased, like you're just getting your friend pulled in. So how do you maintain that? Remaining,
Right.
you know, on a non-bias. It can
So
be
the-
difficult, you know.
the biggest part of the search committee then is communicating out
Yes.
the process, supposedly, you know what I mean, and just letting, like I saw them do on a couple of our these other different forums, you saying, hey, if you're interested, here's your email on how to get the application and all that. So
Right.
why couldn't communications department take care of that? And why couldn't the elections department committee take care of just sharing what the criteria is needed to be a successful qualified candidate, you know, if you were to get elected, so that people have a general idea of the time commitment. If you know, how long's a term then, you know, does everybody know that you're committed then for X amount of years for
Right.
being a board person, and how many meetings do you have to attend? Do you need to be in person? All that stuff.
Yeah.
Couldn't that come from the elections committee when they're kicking off the season, you know, for elections, and then the communication part of it be done under communications? I guess I'm just trying to justify, if the search committee themselves don't feel that they need to exist anymore, how do we part out what they really did, you know?
What I saw, and just from the bylaws, they start at February 1st. So from a point of view of the public side, but you know, I think for the academy online, I'm very compassionate about this. I really think that there should be something where, whether it's like once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, a week, you know, some kind of, you know, what it is involved to be a director. In what I do for my living for 25 years, I see, because I place real estate lawyers in all different capacities, commercial real estate side, you know, I don't want to get too into that, it's too legal, but I have the fortune for so many years of seeing what it's like to be a director, but it really depends on what type of HOA it is, the structure of it. Our structure is, you know, somebody coming into it, like you said, if they're only living here part-time, but they want to move here, let's say 6 months a year, they're retiring or what have you, or they're moving down here, they can work at whatever their case is. They want to be a full-time resident. They may not know, because they're not talking to a lot of people, what it really takes to be a full-time director. That is, I knew what it was going into it. And, you know, to say it's just like, you can't say it's a set, okay, it's 2.5 hours this day. It could be 10 hours a day on another issue, you know, so you have to know, you have to have that time, be able to balance if you are working. It really just depends on the person's situation. I'm fortunate enough, I'm my own person, so I can shift and move. I can work at night. I can make it work during the day. I'm fortunate in that. If you're working for someone and you're working part-time, full-time for an entity, you may not have that. So that's their personal decision right there.
And I
But I
think
do
it's
think
all-
there can be better coordination to remain non-biased. That's really where it comes. The election committee, I understand they want to remain non-biased, and I totally get it. But the search committee doesn't want to look like there's favoritism. It's really it's the lack of communication from one to another, and they all need to be brought on the same page if a search committee would be, and should it be a longer period of time than just that, okay, so it's February 1st. Can they start, in the summer of the year before or after the election in the fall, start scoping out? Maybe it's too little of a time for if a search committee were there to find eligible candidates up
Well, see,
until.
I wouldn't be opposed to seeing the election committee, a couple of times in the year, reminding people, hey, we will be having elections.
Yeah.
We'll start the process officially in February,
Right.
but this particular year we're going to have 2 openings, but next year, state how many openings there are, and that can be just done every now and then. Hey, if you got questions, reach out to us. We'd love to tell you what it takes to be a director, so that when February rolls around,
Yeah.
those who really are interested, they're already going to, like you did, you made the effort to go ahead and find that application. So why not?
think some people might understand, some people understand what it takes to be a director. You have to really look into it, and everyone wakes up, okay, I'm just going to put my name and hat in the mix, be a director. There's a lot more involved with that. You really have to know and learn your own particular association, because no two are the same, depending state to state. They just aren't based on, like Montgomery County, totally different than here. Florida, there's one association with, I think, 22,000 associate. They're run completely different. They still do the non. I apologize. I'm getting over a sickness. There are a lot, and I've done a lot of research on this in the past month or so, just of my own. Most of the associations across the country are still doing it in a nominating like we had years ago. I know for whatever rhyme or reason, whether they thought that was too biased, but those are full-time living communities for the most part. You don't have like the seasonal rentals of what I've looked at. That's another part of it. So, the online, I don't want to make a staff member's job too difficult, more on their mix, but or what have you, or whoever would do this, but it's really just getting the information out there at least 6 to 8 months before, so that person has the time to see what it's like to be a director. And if they have any questions, then they could contact various, whether it's the chairs of the bylaws. Okay, what does this mean? Because there are a lot of questions and things do change with time. So I think that's, from my point of view, where the most confusing part would be, just for someone really to get a handle of, that you can't get involved with the employees. You can't do this. You're overseeing everything for the better of the community, but what are you overseeing? That's the biggest thing.
So do we feel that means we still need to have a committee called the search committee, and maybe the term search needs to change. Maybe it's a different
It could
name,
be like an advice, right? Can they
because
change the
maybe
name?
that's what's making it a difficult thing, that if it sounds like a search committee is the one finding the candidates,
Right.
but if really they're just helping you find the application, they're not even doing the vetting.
Correct.
So, or do we eliminate it, and then where do you disperse those tasks that still do need to occur? Who takes on that role?
I really think
I
like
like
the online
think we
academy,
just-
there should be something, I don't mean to interrupt you, but there needs to be some kind of like a mini education 101 course just for, can that be absorbed into a search committee doing that? I don't, that's something that would have to be thought about as well.
To me, that would be for this academy stuff, that
Yeah.
that could be something that the election committee talks about. The election committee says, here's our process, here's your a description of what a board of director is, the time commitments, all of that in their little video montage that they'll do, and then they can follow up by saying, and then the communications piece of it, that committee, they will be the ones to put out the reminders about the timelines, when the deadlines are coming up, all that stuff to stay in with that. But why couldn't the election
I think the election committee,
piece?
I think it looks biased coming out of, that's just my view, having come from, that side and this. I just think that, like, of reading with the communications the past month or so, their input, I think that they would be better off, like, them first putting out the communication, just simply putting out, we have like a video, however they would do it, of an informational, of bits and pieces of, there would have to be somebody to answer questions. And I don't know how. This is just my initial thought process from where I came from, of looking at it from someone that has absolutely no idea. And they would need somebody to talk to. And if they didn't really, feel comfortable, they don't know where to go to. Am I allowed to call a committee? No, you're not. Or can I call this one? We want to remain biased. We want, it looks it's just that initial step. And some are more, have looked into it as opposed to others, like, just of, the motions, the amendments, the referendums, you don't have them as much, only 2,000 now, but you really need to know all of that. And there's just A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I mean, there's someone in Salisbury I know that teaches directors in case there's issues, but there has to be something where someone puts something together. And just, I don't know if you'd want to have it online or have like that go-to contact, just some informational of who they feel, if whatever question you have from your initial thought process, or even when you hand in your application, who can you talk to so it looks non-biased? That was my biggest point. Because the election committee, I understood, didn't want to look favoring one or the other with a question, which makes complete sense. So, how do you do that was my thought process.
And real quick on the Residence Academy, that is a project of the Public Relations Department. And we have talked about doing some kind of permanent informative video for prospective candidates with, current and former board members, talking about the work requirements, answering questions, and giving people that are thinking about running all the general information they need.
Right.
That's something we've definitely talked about making part of the Permanent Residence Academy online. And we would probably look at something like that in the fall or winter. As for notice, it looks like this year we put out notice in February and again in March that, this is what seats are available this year. This is how you run. Here's a link to the application, that kind of thing. And that's something we do every year.
Yeah, that I definitely, that was good.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it just should be like a more of a, not from you did, like I say, I look at the, but for people that really, if they don't live here or live here full time, or are they looking at the internet, where are they catch? It just depends on individual. That's the problem.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
We plaster it online.
You have.
It goes on the Facebook, it goes in the e-blast, it goes in the local papers. But if you're not here all the time and you're not looking online,
right,
we don't necessarily reach those people.
Right. That's the gap. Somebody doesn't want to sign up for the e-blast, or they don't sign up for the Facebook page, or they don't have Facebook. How do you reach that pocket of people is one thing. Right. That's the problem. You can't take a billboard out, entering Ocean Pines, but how do you go about that? And that's, is there a go-to person if they just want to pick up the phone with an initial, hey, I'm thinking of running next year. Who could I talk to just to hear about what it is to be a director? We'll have them call you, Josh.
Yeah, that is clearly an issue without there being a specific search committee. But Bob, you have any comments you want to get in here?
The only comments I have, in the 20 years I've been in Ocean Pines, I haven't seen much done by the search committee. I think the communications under Josh in the last 2 or 3 years have been phenomenal, and anything you need is available on the website. And as he just talked, they're going to put more information on there in time. And if people have an interest, they're going to go to the website. If they're not interested in going to the website, I don't think they have a real interest in Ocean Pines.
Correct.
So I don't see the need for a search committee that's a temporary, it's not a normal committee that stands year round.
Well, and if you have trouble getting people to be on a committee, why are we still begging,
You got it.
to get that done? So eliminate one committee.
Yep.
Right.
Less volunteers we need for that one. If somebody really wants to volunteer, they can choose from one of the other committees.
Yeah.
I,
How about an informational committee? Information 101. Well, I don't know. Josh volunteered for that. You did, Josh. I'm kidding.
I have no real answer for a question that goes something like, why are we discussing this now? What's happened with the search committee that we're at this point of talking about, should we have a search committee? I don't have a real good answer to that. An answer that I could give probably wouldn't be very popular. Frankly, I don't think the board has paid any attention to it. Committee members in the past have been found one way or another, but recently that hasn't happened. But one of the points made that I think is important, if there is no search committee, if there is someone not specifically oriented, and when I say someone, that could be a person or a committee, but if there's not some person or committee oriented to being a question, answer, or contact about candidacy, what happens then? That would be something would have to be answered there, or there would have to be an answer for that if the search committee goes away. Because as it stands now, the search committee should be available to be contacted should member X be thinking about being a candidate, want to know something about being a candidate or being a member of the board or how to become a candidate.
So
and so
would
forth. That would not exist if a search committee went away.
Right.
So would that person then just, if they're fairly new, they're interested, they're looking for basic info, they don't really know about the website yet, they would just email that general info email, correct, or whatever it's labeled, and then that staff person would then refer them and share with them that this information can be found on the website. So then what you're saying is, do we still need another point of contact that if they have gone through everything that's posted on the website and they still have questions about running, who would they contact then?
Yeah, if you don't have that, you lose the in-person contact. Now, how important is that? I don't honestly know, but you do lose that.
Still, couldn't that be the communications piece then? The communications committee take that on as if we're trying to keep the election committee unbiased and out of answering basic questions. I mean, if you don't feel that they can even answer a general question like that because that makes them too involved, then put that over with the communications committee. If they're going to be the ones to help remind people about deadlines and, get your applications in by such and such date, all that kind of stuff, couldn't they be the ones to answer, depending on what the question is, I guess, if we have a lot of the information already posted, hopefully there wouldn't be a ton of questions, I mean, and if they're really, if a person still really has that many questions, then I would refer them to a past recent director to say, hey, would you talk to this person and let them know what you did? What was your time commitment? All of that kind of stuff, and give a real life response than just a committee person saying, well, it's typically 10 hours a week or whatever, can't we ask if they're willing, past directors, the more recent the better, then to be up on everything, to be mentors and just say, hey, if anybody has questions, I'd be glad to answer them for you. Or is that
Okay.
something a current director can answer?
As to what the communications committee could do or would do or consider doing, I wouldn't try to answer that part of that. The discussion of the Residence Academy, if I've got the right terminology, some fairly good presentation there, in particular from either current or past directors about being a director could go a long way toward answering that kind of thing. Whether that would be adequate or not, I think that's merits further discussion. And I want to bail out of this and get out of the discussion again with one final comment. I think with regard to the election committee participation in this, I think they've made it pretty clear that they don't want to pick up in the election process, considering the election process, starting with candidacy and concluding with the election results. They don't want to pick up in that process until they get from the secretary the list of candidates. I think they've made it pretty clear that that's where they want to start. They don't want anything to do with what goes before, meaning in particular being a party to explaining what it takes to be a candidate, or for that matter, what it takes to become, what qualifies you for becoming a candidate. I think they've made it pretty clear that they want to start after the candidates have been verified, or the applications have been verified, whatever the proper term is, by the secretary and turned over to the committee itself. I think that's where they want to pick up, and they don't want to go back in time and get involved in anything in the process leading up to that. Anyway, let's the rest of you continue on here. I've had my say for a few minutes.
Well,
Bob, you got the floor.
yeah, my question is, in the long time that I've been here, I haven't seen a lot of activity on the part of the search committee. And there have been years that they were appointed or almost not appointed, because the president has to appoint that committee. And unless they have people that have had experience as past directors, how are they in a position to answer the questions that candidates are going to have? I mean, I think it's the wrong approach. I think communications, advertise, and like was just mentioned, there's a mailbox on there in communications. You got questions, get past board members. They're the best qualified to answer those questions. They can tell you how many hours it takes besides attending meetings. And, you know, I just think it's a wrong approach. I think the committee, by their decision of not wanting to get involved in recruiting, I don't think they're the right group to recruit anyway.
Right.
We managed to find enough people, and let's figure out how to get past directors to help be the mentors to answer those questions, people that have worn the hat and sit in the seat.
Yep.
Exactly. And I think that's a good point too. I think it should be mentioned or encouraged to the current board to consider that when they're done their term, whether it's because they just finished their term or they didn't win an election, it doesn't really matter. They could still contribute and still be part of the process and support to the system by being willing to answer questions to potential candidates, you know, or even if they, you know, in my mind, even if they make the new person gets elected, why can't an old director still be willing to be available to answer questions if something comes up? You know, I do that a lot in my PTA work. That's what I do. I'm a mentor. You know what I mean? So I didn't just say, oh, I'm done, I'm out of that position. You know, so you can still pay it forward by being willing to help somebody else down the road.
Yeah, I think finding candidates is ideal from the communications. The mentoring should be past board president, or not presidents, but past board members. And there's a lot of them, if you ask for help, would help.
Right.
But how do you appoint a committee in February to try to find people to run for the board? It doesn't seem like the right way to do it. And
Right.
technology changed since those bylaws were written a lot. And Josh has done a great job in communications. I mean, that website is now friendly. It's easy to get to. You ask questions, you get answers almost immediately. That never happened in the past.
Right.
Where do I send the check, Bob? Thank you.
Bob decided to sell his house and move tomorrow, Josh. Bill going. He's out of here with your bill. It will return to sender, I'm sure. No. You know, I think I agree with you on one flip side. I agree with Bob. It's such a shortened period for the search committee, and having lived here 20 some plus years, you've seen, but with Jim, the same thing. If you eliminate it, you know, going forward a year or 2, 3 years down the road, why did they eliminate that? You know, and then do we have a need for it down the road? I mean, obviously with technology, Josh has done such a great job. And again, what I had said before, if you want to be a director or join a committee, you're going to reach out. You know, the younger generations most know you just give a call or you send an email in. You know, time going forward, it's not like 20 years ago where you had to, like, you know what I'm saying? Technology has improved so much of that. It's just, I'm compassionate about just some kind of informational or a go-to person. And if it's a director, great. Some will want to, you know, ask them or past directors who would want to do that. You know, reach out and see who would give, or even just write something down. Step 1, 2, 3. This is what I discovered being a director that I didn't know the first 6 months, year, that could help an individual to really understand and what it would be like. And these are the situations I came into, you know, just to prepare somebody, you know, a little bit in their mind. You know, I don't think, again, you can just say it's going to be an hour today and 3 hours tomorrow, because you don't know 6 months from now what is going to come into place, you know, as this association grows. So that I feel would have been helpful. From what I had, again, I didn't really have anyone to talk to, and of just little simple questions, who do you go to? And I always felt I didn't want the election committee, I definitely will have to remain, you know, non-biased. And then where do you go to from there? So I think that could help people, you know, members greatly in the future years. Just a go-to contact, even if it's just a one question. They need 10 minutes to talk. So.
Okay,
Input.
Let me try to summarize where I think we are right now, and then we'll go from there, continue on whichever direction. It appears that the consensus is at least that the search committee is not currently effective and may not ever be effective in its current form, whenever it's appointed or not appointed. And that we need to be looking for an alternative approach and communications. And when I say communications, I don't mean to emphasize the Communications Advisory Committee, but communicating that there is an election, that there are vacancies on the board, or will be vacancies on the board up for election. Josh, okay, I'm not sure what coming. Go ahead, Josh.
No, I didn't have any comment.
Okay. All right. The element of communications is the important part of this process, in the sense of communicating that there's an election, there are vacancies to be filled, the process and whatever all that entails is the critical element. And the next part of that is who does what in that element. And it's at least a two-party, if I can put it that way, consideration. One would be the staff, and the other would perhaps be the communications committee itself. Let me stop there. Have I given a reasonable summary of where we think we may be? Number one, we don't see us going forward with a proposal to keep the search committee. And secondly, communications are the key element, and that involves the staff and another entity at least, which could conceivably be the Communications Advisory Committee. Is that a reasonable summary of what each of you think where we're at on this situation?
Yes.
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 Okay. I've talked myself into having to put some more to that. The Communications Advisory Committee has indicated at least a willingness to participate in the communications of candidacy elements. I'm searching for words to say that, and I can't think of any other better words. How far they are willing to go beyond what they've said so far would remain to be seen. The participation of the staff and how much participation of the staff would go, and I know we have Josh here, but that's actually a general manager's decision. I think we're perhaps at a place where it is now necessary to go out to both of those elements and open up the dialogue, the discussion of how far each would go in putting into the bylaws. It would have to go into the bylaws something to the effect that the staff would be communicating information regarding upcoming elections and candidacies for the positions and be advised in that process by the communications committee. This kind of thing would have to be in the bylaws stated in some manner. I'm not trying to sit here and try to figure out how to state that. That's a whole different project. But it would have to say, the bylaws would have to say something to the extent of staff participation and committee participation in that communication process leading up to the actual verified candidacies. That would mean going back to these two different entities, the general manager and the communications committee, or someone else, depending on what anyone else may have in mind, with an exploration of how they see their participation, how they feel it is acceptable, proper, whatever, in particular in the case of the staff, to participate in that manner in a bylaws-based provision. Now, I'm kind of trying to struggle how to wind up what I'm saying, but I'm at the point of saying I see it necessary probably to do that. I've got a message that's come up on my screen that says you've chosen to restart your device as soon as possible. An update is pending. I don't want to do that.
Don't do that.
Let me click on not now.
Yeah, not now will work.
I don't think I'm I don't think I'm going to disappear. Maybe I should, but I'm not. Okay, now, are we at the point when where that kind of a communication should be done to, number one, the general manager, and number two, communications committee, for lack of any other entity, if I could put it that way?
Yeah.
Any comments on that, please?
I think the time has come that you need to go back with the next step to the communications committee and the election committee and saying, what can you do to support it? And then also probably back to the board president to get a hold of past members of the board to see what they can do to help become mentors, because that's what's missing. There should be a mentor program.
Great.
Okay, well, that's good, but we also need to focus on I think what we've decided is the prime search activity is communicating to the membership about the fact that there's an election coming, and candidacies are being sought, for lack of a better term. That part, we got to address that. The other part of it is looking for help, for help from various sources to help anybody that is interested, that wants information on what they have to do, or either to become a candidate or what they do if they become a board member.
Mm-hmm.
I
the
got it.
communications element is got to be addressed. How are we going to do that?
Well, why don't we get these past directors to be on the search committee then? Or, why not make that, yes, you finished your time, but why not say at least one of them, encourage them, if they want to stay involved in the community when they're done as a director, to be on whatever committee we're going to call this, if we're keeping it called search, or if we're getting rid of that and putting it on, have them be part of the communications team then, so that we have a way to keep them involved.
We might need to get another committee to get that committee going. We might need a search committee for the directors to join that committee.
I'll do the recruiting. I'll volunteer to do the recruiting for that part.
I'll back you up.
I'll have to interject a personal expression from many years gone by. And back in my days as a young Marine, if you want me to do something like that, you're going to have to burn the woods and sift the ashes in order to find me. That's maybe a response from former board members to that kind of a request. Okay, see, I'm still hung up on this, guys. This element, we're going to communicate. What role does the association itself have in it? And that means, what role does the staff have in it? Mm-hmm. We're going to have to address communication to the association in the bylaws. If communication is our path toward making it known and making available to people the fact that the store is open for candidates, it's communication. Right. We're not going to be depending on it. We're not going to be depending on a committee, a search committee in this case, and the provisions of M09 that tell the search committee what the things that should be doing, or we expect them to do. We're not going to have that committee leading the way.
It does sound like, if you're talking staff, that poor Josh and his description, maybe he would have the better guidance in telling us who we need to approach. Is it the general manager then, who and I don't know how all the different for lack of a better term, the committees under your staffing, under the general manager, all the different departments then, or whatever. Is it feasible that the initial communication is a staff coming from the actual staff of the organization and then referred to, then they can refer others to then the committee that will handle answering questions. I still feel like, because Jim's trying to, from what if I'm hearing right, and I could be totally wrong, is this something that if we eliminate the search committee, then who is the one doing the communicating? Is it a staff person from the full entity of our organization, or
Laura,
is it
I'm
a
sorry,
committee?
but it's the elections committee. The staff really doesn't have anything to do with formulating a search committee for nominations for the board. That's outside their. And I am also the board liaison to the elections committee. They really don't want to do this. They don't want to be responsible for forming the search committee, and ask that the provision simply be side, because the search committee hasn't worked sometime yet. This year we still had word of mouth for communications through Josh. We're now obtaining applications for the board of directors, but to answer your question, no, it's not staff duty to do that.
Jim, I would suggest, if you were going to put something in the bylaws, it could be something like, staff with the GM approval would post notice each January or February, whatever you want to say, about upcoming board vacancies, how many seats, how to get an application, and then have some manner of this is who you would reach out to for questions.
Right.
Something along that line.
Yeah.
I'm not so much concerned right now about the kind of words we would put in the bylaws. The direction of my comments on this was that I would not think we should be proceeding in any kind of direction like that without communicating. I think it would be appropriate to communicate to the general manager, although
Absolutely.
it would wind up coming down to you probably for comment. Communicating to the general manager some outline of what's being considered, and emphasis on considered, and what are his what are his thoughts, objections, concerns, or whatever about that kind of approach, and the participation of the staff, the association staff, in that manner. That would be that's what I am basically asking. If we're going to go communications, with the element of communications being the central point of where we're going, in lieu of a search committee, a staff participation of some kind is necessary.
They have to understand, somebody on staff needs to be able to say, oh, great question. Here's the committee, or here's the next point of contact that will be able to answer you and assist you. Because you can't publicize that there's a general info. Ask your questions at such and such email that's going through a staff person, and then they're clueless on who they should refer that person to.
But that's what that's for, that info general line. If they can't directly answer a question, they'll find somebody that can in a timely manner, and that's worked pretty well. So I think that could totally handle that.
Well, we're into the details here. The basic thing is, I sent something to John Viola, and 5 minutes later he sends it back to me and says, "Go away. Your emails have been blocked. I never want to hear it from you or see you again." The dialogue needs to be open. That's what I'm saying.
But what we're really talking about is the bylaws, where it clearly states the president of the board appoints a committee. So, it's a board responsibility. How do they want to deal with that?
Well,
Well,
Bob,
it would go out completely. Any reference to the search committee would go out.
Bob,
Camille,
I
yes.
agree with you. I don't mean to belabor this point, but I see the election as a board responsibility. I don't see it as a general manager responsibility. The general manager is in operations. He manages everything else from roads to contracts to everything else, but he doesn't manage for the board. So respectfully, Jim, I do not agree with that take on this, but I think that what we can do is what Josh said, allow the communications department to put out notices on our Facebook page, on somewhere else that says we are now in the process of getting candidates for the next Board of Elections, or Board of Directors election. I just don't see the tie-in. I mean, the bylaws very specifically say the board shall, doesn't say anywhere the general manager shall. I can't on the general manager.
But I'm taking it as, I don't take it as that he's saying the general manager is now in charge of doing anything. But if we're going to ask somebody like Josh in the communications department to be willing to update the website with our information and all of that, is to make sure that they're in agreement that yes, this is that department head can put out that information. I didn't take it as,
But they already do. They put it on the website. I mean, they put it on the website. It's been on the Facebook page. It really has been everywhere. So the communications department has been doing that. And if we need to write it down somewhere that they have expressed communication to do it, then it should be the board that delegates that responsibility to the communications department to put out notices regarding the board of directors election.
But that would have to go through the GM from the board.
Right, because that's right. I just don't want you to have to be responsible for handling something that you don't have to handle. I mean, it goes to the GM only because the GM manages staff.
correct, right?
Yeah,
Right.
and that's it.
I don't think anybody is asking Josh to take on any additional duties here. I think what
I
we're
was going to
just trying
say
to
we pretty much do
clarify,
all of this anyway.
right,
Yeah.
we're just trying to clarify though, as stated earlier, that when a potential candidate has questions, we need to know who to refer them to. And if the search committee themselves have said they don't feel that that committee is even needed anymore, that it's not helpful, it's not useful, it's not functioning well, we're having a hard time even getting volunteers, then isn't our goal then to figure out a way to that when we eliminate or when potentially that committee is no longer there, some of the things that they did do, where does that stuff show up? And I think that's just where our conversation has been going. Does it, do we put it all on the community? I think it's a combination, making sure that staff is willing to advertise for us, that the communications committee themselves is willing to also communicate all of those deadlines and all of that stuff out. I don't think anybody's trying to give anybody else any extra duties, and that it is up to the board if they're going to work together and have successful elections to be on board with this too, and to understand,
I mean, that's fine.
Where are we at?
So let me ask then,
Good question.
as a director, do you feel that we still need to have a search committee?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I truly don't. I've lived here for 3 years. It hasn't worked in 3 years. No search committee came to find me. No search committee came to find Colette or Larry or Tom or any of us. And we really scratched our heads about what a search committee is supposed to do. The last person who tried to run a search committee with Steve Tuttle. He walked around and asked people if they wanted to become, if they were interested in becoming a director. I don't know if that attempt by him was successful, but the attempts that Scott made on the communications page has been successful. And yeah,
Okay.
grant that the communications is under him, and that we would have to have permission. But I suggest, or I move, that this section of the bylaws should be missed or done away with.
Yeah, I mean, long story short, you're kind of codifying what's already been happening,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
minus the search committee.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
it
now-
sounds like we're all on the same page then.
Well, I think we are, as far as there not being a continuation of the search committee, but we're still at a situation where we've got to think about when you take out of the bylaws all references to the search committee, and I believe they're all in the 5.0 to 03, whatever, 2 or 3 subsections of the bylaws. You take all of the references to the search committee out, then you've got to say something, or do you not have to say something about how someone becomes a candidate for membership on the board of directors. And there's where we've got to decide some kind of a direction. Now, Camilla, are you, for example, proposing words to the effect that the board of directors shall, in some manner, give direction to a committee, whatever committee, could be elections, communications, could be bylaws and resolutions for that matter, and to the staff regarding how to proceed with the candidacy process, and just leave it at that? Or what other approach would you want to go?
I think that the I mean, I don't think that Josh does advertisements for other things he posts on the Ocean Palms website. I mean, I don't think that he goes to permission seeking. I mean, in my mind, I think that this whole thing about a search committee, without continuing to belabor it, go away and put into a policy administered by the general manager through the communications committee. I just personally don't think we need it. But if people feel more comfortable having it, then you could put search committee for the board of directors is delegated to the general manager by mechanisms he deems appropriate.
I'm not sure where that leaves me. Anybody else have any comments on that?
So let's make sure that I'm hearing correctly. I really think what Jim's trying to ask is, what if we remove the search committee, any place in the bylaws then that it's mentioned, what do we put in its place, or do we put anything at all? Correct? I mean,
Yes.
Like, for
because
example,
we're not talking about actually then who does the different duties or anything. We're just saying written word, search committee is mentioned in the bylaws. If we no longer have a search committee, what do we put there? Like who then, I think that's where we're trying to look, true bylaws stuff, not duty wise.
well, like, for example, with section 5.02, if you go to C, candidate applications, just bringing that up, where it says there, an application form provided by the search committee, it's just a small part like that. You could just say provided by going on the Ocean Pines website or downloading and handing in, that easily can be explained. But I understand what you're saying, Laura. Each section, each little piece would just have to be reworded.
Right.
But I understand what Jim's saying, the whole picture of it.
The bylaws, there's going to be an election. That's what 5.02B says. There's going to be an election.
Mhm.
And 5.02C says, if you want to be a candidate, you got to have it turned in by May 10th, whatever direction it goes, forget about that. But there's going to be an election in 5.02B. In 5.02C, you want to be a candidate, your candidacy's got to be, your application has to be turned in
Right.
by May 10th.
I really
How
think
do
we
we
should-
say that if we take out every reference, or what do we say about the election and candidacies if we take out all of the actions in those two sections that the search committee has to participate in or do?
It's like what I was saying, like for instance, in section, what you were just saying, 502, 0.02C, on one part of it, the form shall be submitted to the committee not later than May 10th. It should have the time, no later than, let's say, 4 p.m. spelt out, and shall state that the candidate meets the requirements. When it says the form shall be submitted to the committee, basically, if you're handing it in to the the administrative office, you could just replace that with that, and then it will go.
Right.
You have to put in there who it's going to. Is it going to the section
Or
secretary?
if the secretary, right, if the
Right.
secretary is the
And will
one
be
verifying
forwarded
it,
to the secretary. That
then,
could easily
yeah.
be done there, and
I would
eliminate
just
the
say-
search committee.
I would just say put a period and say, submit your application, available either at the office or on the website,
And then you
period.
just, all forms for committee for a candidate are due in no later than, let's say, you do a time, 4
Right.
p.m., 5, whatever time it is, 4
End
p.m.
of closed
They stamp
business.
it, whatever, I don't know, and shall state that the candidate meets the requirements, and then that be directed to either the secretary, or it just
Right.
has to be transparent who it's being sent to. If you're eliminating the search, and then you eliminate the search committee.
Right.
Hang on a second, I'm trying to look something up here for possible cross reference.
But then you have to reference it back to another section, so.
Yeah.
So is the section then in B where it says the committee shall attempt to acquire at least 2 more candidates and the number of
Right.
vacancies?
That
Is
was
that,
next.
is that another separate discussion? Do we feel that even needs to stay in there?
No.
Um,
That doesn't need to stay in there either, because once again, as the board liaison to the elections committee, we have tried to do that the last couple of years. We didn't have to do it this year because we did have 4 candidates. But, again, I'm just going to go on record of saying, I think we're putting too much in the bylaws. I think that this is a policy that is directed by the general manager under the board, and the general manager reports to the board. I don't think we need all this. I really, truly don't. But
Oh.
if the committee wants to maintain all the stuff, bylaws about the search committee, that's fine. I just want to go on saying I think it belongs more in organizational policy.
Okay, well, the additional candidates, I don't think there's any question that can seriously be deleted. I don't, that's not directly related to the search committee, so let's just set that aside. Among other things that could be done, and this is spur of the moment thought, there could be reference in there that the candidacy process will be considered or will be covered in a board resolution. The same kind of thing is said with regard to reserve funds, for example. The reserve funds are established in a board resolution. And that's kicking the can down the road. That means now instead of writing something up in bylaws, you're going to have to write it up in a board resolution and assign responsibilities in a board resolution for how you go about searching for, if I can use that term, searching for candidates, finding candidates, informing the association about the candidacy possibility, you would do it in a resolution and simply kick the bylaws can down the road by saying that in place of B and C that's highlighted here on the screen. That's another way of doing this. In the silence, I'm going to say that means somebody's going to have to write a resolution, and I'm not volunteering.
I think you have to mention something in here.
Woods.
I mean, you have to mention something in the bylaws, just like how somebody would hand it in, at least just putting the basic terms of no later than May 10th at this time, where you need to hand it into, like stuff like that. But
Well, that's
well, the May 10th would have to be in there, yes.
right. That's
already
but right.
bylaws.
But to have to put the word search committee, I mean, in paragraph C, I think you can just remove search committee easily from that. I don't think that's, but then it hops over. I'm just looking back and forth here in the book.
Well, there are at least two things in those two paragraphs that have to be left in there. One is the deadline for submittal,
Correct.
and second is that the candidacy eligibility will be evaluated by as of May 10th.
Right.
Or 5th, not 10th, 15th. That would have to be in there.
Right.
But the who has to communicate, how it's communicated, who advises, that sort of thing, put it in a resolution.
Okay, and remember that all of that is also included under the section regarding the elections committee. The
Right.
election committee section of the bylaws has very clear indications of when things need to be done, when the secretary signs off on them, when the deadline for ensuring that it's eligible voters. So some of the things you've just talked about, Lisa, are already under the section.
Yeah.
Elections
Oh,
committee.
absolutely. Yeah, when I'm looking at you, the first time I was on the bylaw, you're flip-flopping back. Absolutely, everything's named over there. I was just taking off of, I think, what Laura was saying, or Jim, like who in the past, like the word search committee. How do you eliminate it out of that? Just compress it and you just take it out.
Right. I think just redline it.
Right.
Whatever you want to say, that we're recommending that these sentences be removed and leave it as, the shortened version that we came up with,
Right.
where the word search committee isn't even involved in there, but it
Right.
still gives all the same correct information that we want, that for consistency's sake. Because again, I think that's all Jim's ultimate goal is to make sure we're consistent throughout the whole document, So, but I think it would be very easy to just edit and say, we're recommending that these sentences out of each of these paragraphs or a whole paragraph or whatever be removed.
However,
now,
when it comes to a communication point, then they have to be put in
right,
based on what they feel,
Who has the final say on whether or not the search committee is actually removed or not? Who will have the final say on that?
Well,
Is that the board?
oh yeah, well, the board would have the final say on what on a bylaws resolution revision. But Camilla, that brings up a point that I hadn't mentioned earlier when we started this search committee discussion. You may not even know this, but there is in fact a search committee report. There's a search committee is to report on its activities. I think it's by the end of June. That's called out in Resolution M09.
Yeah.
And the search committee did in fact submit a report. And I don't know. The resolution says to the board it actually went to the board, the liaison to the committee, which is Larry, and I have no idea whether that's been shared or not. And what I neglected to say at the beginning of our discussion as a committee here a while back is that is to identify the fact that I do not know if the board has even seen this yet. But
No, we
my
haven't.
recommendation to the committee is we proceed on our own as to what to do about the search committee with our own thinking, our own discussion, our own work on it, unless and until told to hold off, go away, or whatever by the board on this subject, and they'll take it. Now, apparently, the board doesn't even know about it.
Jim, I'm sorry.
That's an existing fact. There is a recommendation from the search committee as it existed this year to do away with it. And that's what we're proceeding on. And I think we should continue to proceed on it unless we're told not to or given other direction as to what to be thinking about.
Okay.
Guys, I'm kind of at the point here, we've talked about making some specific, if I can put it this way, red line to the existing provision. Anybody want to volunteer to do that?
I'll do it. Nobody's raising their hand, I'll do it. With the help of all of you, of course.
Lisa, I'll help you with that. I've written board resolutions before.
I'm just joking.
Yeah, I can help you do that.
Oh, I appreciate it.
All right. Have I got 2 volunteers for our next meeting, which is to be determined here later on, that would start redlining I think it's 502 B and C. I don't know the search committees elsewhere, but at least those 2. And we'll be up for further discussion at our next meeting. Is that an agreeable approach to all of us?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I don't think we're voting on all this. We just need a consensus. We're not making final decisions on what we're proposing. All right, that's fine with me. It turns out that I have to watch these videos to write the minutes anyway, so I'll chalk that off and let's continue on with our next item. The next item on the agenda is the eligibility to vote topic. I have flip-flopped in the sequence that's on that status summary that's been distributed. I flip-flopped that with the supermajority because I think the eligibility to vote issue is not necessarily that hard to discuss. Very briefly, the eligibility to vote issue is to avoid the confusion that can and apparently has existed regarding the 35-day provision that's also in that referenced section of the bylaws. The proposal is to separate out parts of the one section and make it more than one section or subsection, so that you're not in the particular case that happened, the individual who was making the application for the candidacy was contending that he had the 35-day provision, was not eligible on the May 15th date, but had the 35 days provision to become eligible, and that was denied. There was actually was a litigation that was withdrawn, but the application was denied, and this is intended to avoid that kind of a confusion. It's basically a question of rewriting the provision, and again. Let me stop there. Do we have any questions, comments, whatever, on this particular topic and how to proceed to resolve this proposal? I'm going to forewarn you that the final sentence or phrase that is highlighted there by Josh, if it is agreed that clarification is needed, then what needs to be done is a proposal needs to be drafted. Again, any comments, questions?
Not yet.
I am trying to run this to a, excuse me, a 2-hour limit, which we're now 14 minutes, 14 minutes to go, so we can run out the clock if we have to. All right, let me make this proposal and you all can say yay or nay or no comment. I'll volunteer to draft a proposal unless somebody else wants to do it. Because I personally think we're at the point where what we need to do is just simply put in words and go from there. And unless we have a consensus that, well, it's okay the way it is, just leave it there. For me,
after the last almost lawsuit, it makes sense that it should be revised.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I've always felt that way. And there were people who contended that 35 days did come into play, and I was somewhat surprised by that. Other than the applicant himself, and I think it needs to be. I think the confusion needs to be avoided. The real problem that I see is that you state something and then immediately right thereafter in the next sentence you put in some kind of a qualifier. You shouldn't be doing that. You gotta separate you got to separate things out so that you don't run from one to the other, two different directions. I'll go ahead and put something together for our next meeting.
Okay.
All right, moving right along here. And again, we need to get to some other business. And I think, as I said, I think it's appropriate that we not go too much beyond our 2-hour limit, not limit, but beyond 2 hours.
Right.
The supermajority, I just want to briefly comment on that. That, again, in the status that was sent around a week or so ago, the purpose behind that is such that a minority of the association doesn't commit the association to a course of action. And it would be based on a certain number of votes having to be in favor of a proposal that's been subjected to a vote, would be a referendum in particular. That not simply a majority of the votes returned were in favor of the proposal, but a percentage of the votes that were eligible would also have to be met. The current proposal, the current bylaws provision is that when you have a vote on a referendum, the last referendum we had, for example, in the almost 2 months ago now, when the votes were counted, was decided by a majority of the returned votes being in favor of the referendum proposal. In the supermajority proposal, it would be not only a majority of the returned votes favorable, but the returned votes favorable must equal or exceed a set percentage of the number of votes eligible to be cast. That is a different kind of supermajority than the one we have for a removal of a director by referendum. And a removal of a director by referendum, you have to have a majority of the votes that were eligible. It's similar, but that's an example of a supermajority, not simply a majority of the votes cast, but a majority of the votes eligible to be cast. And this is similar to it, just expressed in a percentage form. Trying to quickly wrap this up so we can go on to something else, because I don't think we're going to get into any kind of a decision. Not only is there a decision would have to be made, do we want to change from or add to the current practice of a majority of the votes cast and add to it another qualifier? That's decision number one. And if we're going to do that, what percentage do we use? Now, I also submitted or sent around somewhat longer ago the examples of the last 5 or 6, I think it's 5 now, referendums that took place since 2002, I believe it was, yes, 2002, and numbers associated with them with regard to the percentage of votes, percentage of yes votes cast in those elections just for comparison purposes. And some of that had to be estimated numbers, as explained in the footnotes. There is an actual number in there that I found that didn't change anything. So there's that information we can look at and make any decisions, use it in any way we want to. The question would be, does anybody have an interest in pursuing research on this further and thinking further about whether we want to go to this kind of an approach? I don't know. There could be research done. I've looked at some areas and haven't found much at all as to this kind of a supermajority. But I think the basic decision we're going to have to make is whether or not we want to lay on this additional requirement for a favorable vote, and in particular, this would be on referendums, a favorable vote. Do we want to lay on this particular additional requirement above and beyond what we have now? And frankly, what we have always had for, as far as I know, from the beginning of the association. I can't go back any further than about 1982 bylaws, but that's going to be our decision. As I see it, that's going to be our decision. Does anybody have any further thoughts on that? Anybody want to do any more research? Let's put it that way. The only research I've really done is try to do a web research for supermajority, and then I did this research on the referendums that we've had over the last 18, 19 years, and the voting results from it. I'll just make one final comment, and I'm going to quit. If you look at our last referendum, which is the bylaws amendment, yes, the vote was pretty overwhelmingly yes versus no. Mm-hmm. But when you look at it as a percentage of the yes votes as a percentage of the eligible votes, is only 31%. Now, 25%, as was a possible suggestion, that would have beat the 25%, it would have beat 30%. Well, what if we had put 35% in there? I don't know that would have been very well received to say that, well, you didn't get 35%, so it wasn't approved. Well, anyhow, I'll leave that comment, and probably shouldn't have made it in the first place.
But look at Jim, what you actually, with the history, and I think you've done the research, you're showing 5 resolutions. The lowest one that ever got approved was at 25%, and that was a bylaw resolution, which is what you're proposing now. Yeah, I mean, we're going to go to bylaws, and it seems like there weren't that many people interested in it. When you look at the number of votes cast versus the number of votes eligible.
Well, the 25% is actually the total votes. That, in other words, the maximum was 28% for percentage of eligible votes. That was kind of an unusual year. That, if I recall correctly, there were only 2 candidates up for election that year for 2 vacancies, so that there's a poor turnout to begin with. The turnout, I think, was 39% for the entire, for the 39% for the bylaws approval itself.
So the question then becomes, aside from doing any research, if you set a number and you don't achieve that number, does it mean you go back for a second resolution? Or do you drop it?
If it was a referendum, I believe the bylaw, and again, I'm not going to look over my shoulder at the bylaws. I don't think you can go. I'm not sure that you can go back again for another year, but I'm not sure that that's exactly what the bylaws say. But yeah, there would be a question of when can you try that again? Yes, and I'm not sure that kind of thing is covered in the bylaws. It may be or may not be.
Yeah, I don't remember. I tried to look for it and I couldn't quite find it. So
yeah. Well, let's drop that one now and pick it up the next time. I think what we're all going to have to talk amongst ourselves. Do we really want to make this kind of a change to our approval of members voting? Is there a good basis for doing that? That, to me, that's the what we're going to have to think about. And then let's hold off on that, because again, we're right at our 2 hours, and I want some stuff we got to talk about.
right.
Very quickly, there are 2 additional topics that have been added. There should be on that at the very end of the status that was distributed. They're not up to, I don't want to talk about them in any detail. And the information that was in the status is got the background to what it's all about. The one is should associate members, meaning those persons who are not actual members of the association, be allowed to be committee members, and that in particular would most likely be thought of in terms of people who have some kind of a commitment, rental commitment to the association, and we're not talking about people who are here. An associate member, you can be an associate member renting a place for the weekend. And that would, I don't think, be the kind of thing we're talking about. We're talking about somebody who's got some kind of a term rental agreement. That's been raised again at the executive council meeting a month or so ago. The other one is the director removal, where a association member has asked that be considered for revision, because in the individual's review, it's virtually impossible for a director to be removed. All that information there just describes what the current bylaws are, what the past bylaws have been, and what the Maryland Code provides with regard to removal of a director by members of a corporation. That the provision in the bylaws or the code is expressed in terms of stockholders, but that stockholders also, the term also includes non-stock or corporation members. Those are there for information, for discussion as we come down the list to look at this kind of stuff, and we're well short of that. That's just simply there for information for the future.
Okay.
Now, if I can, we need to talk about future meetings. Last meeting, we talked about going to more than one meeting a month, and I think there was general agreement that we should do that. I don't think we're helping ourselves if we go much longer than a 2-hour meeting, and 2 hours once a month is not likely to get us there very, very soon on our bylaws project, not to mention maybe keeping up with routine stuff on the committee list of things we need to be doing. Josh, you still with us? Hopefully. There has been interest from at least one or two people about continuing the virtual meetings, that's convenient for one reason or another. And we do have a member who is not a resident member. And I think, Laura, it's probably pretty convenient for you to be able to participate. I have no problem continuing that. It's okay with me. And if we're not running afoul of policies of the association, Josh, I would like to continue that.
I have no problem offering support.
Okay, now let me make a future meeting suggestion. If we were to meet every 2 weeks, meaning same time, same place.
You've got mail.
Somebody's got mail, not me.
No,
Oh.
me.
That's probably my phone, sorry. I usually, it's the only one I can hear, the old AOL, you've got mail.
If we were to meet every 2 weeks for the next 3 meetings, we would then run up against the next meeting at 2 weeks would be the Friday before Labor Day, and I don't think there's much enthusiasm for that. Although this family won't be going anywhere and do anything special, but that would be my proposal. For the next 3 meetings, we would go every 2 weeks, and I gotta.
So you're talking the 23rd of July?
Yeah, that would be, and I think the 6th of August and
Yeah, I
24th.
won't be here. I'll be out of town the 6th of August.
Yeah, I know you're scheduled out for a period of time there. So it would be 2 weeks from today would be, what was that, the 23rd? Yeah, 23rd, 6th of August, and the 20th of August. And then we would have to go 2 weeks from the 20th of August would be Labor Day Friday. I guess we would skip that one. What do people think about that?
Okay. I'm
I
think it's a
okay
good-
with, yeah.
I regrettably am going, well, not regrettably, but my husband's taking me to Greece for our 40th wedding anniversary. So there are several of those dates that I'm not going to be available.
Okay, the Friday is not necessarily a locked-in date, is it? Does anybody have, would changing it a day along the way make any difference, Camilla?
No, because we're going to be going for 2 consecutive weeks, and then we're going to New Mexico to visit a daughter. So I'm going to be going a total of 3 weeks. So the day isn't going to make a difference.
Okay. How about, what's the situation with anyone else?
Okay, pick the dates again so I can double check my calendar. You're saying the 23rd of July. That one's I can make work. Then the next would be the 6th of August, right?
Yeah,
I'm out of town on that one. I won't get back from California to the following Wednesday.
okay, you would be then back by August 20th.
Yeah,
All
I get
right.
back. Yeah, I get back. I'll be here for the 20th if you do the 20th.
Yeah.
Or
How about everybody else?
I can do the July 23rd. We don't really take vacations, so I'm here. I'm just I won't be back physically in Ocean Pines till the middle of August if you wanted to do an in-person meeting. So once I'm back in the middle of August, then I will be there until probably the beginning of October. You know, so we don't, if you wanted to do an in-person one, I could do one more towards the fall,
Okay,
the September maybe, depending on the day.
after Labor Day.
Yeah. But of course, either way, virtual is fine with me. So I don't really, right now, I don't have any problems with any of those dates.
Okay, Lisa, any thoughts on your part?
I'm fine with July 23rd. I'm just trying to figure out, August 20th I'm fine with. It's just the 6th. I have to go up to New York, either the end of that week or the week of from the 12th through the beginning of the next week. So I can let you know about that. I'm just not certain.
Okay.
I'm trying to coordinate
Okay.
that.
I will also send an email to Keith.
Yeah.
All right, let's,
How many people do we need to have quorum again?
you have to have 3.
Okay.
I'm
We
not
have-
not a member, so I count into that quorum.
Yeah, that's right. It's 5 members on the committee now, and a quorum would be a majority of 3.
Okay.
All right, well,
I mean,
let's
I can let you
tentatively-
know soon about either the 6th. Obviously, you can't do it the 13th, and then again the 20th. That makes no sense. So I'll let you
Unless
know.
we did the 13th and the 27th, that could be an option if that fit people better. Just,
Well, I'm going to be out of town the 27th of August.
oh, okay. All right.
Well, let's tentatively go with those dates. I'll send something to Keith. And Lisa, you still need to consider what,
Just August 6th. I'll see if I
Okay.
can just bump it up to the following week.
Well,
You know.
yeah, and if we're in a situation where we just have a quorum and we go from there, we're gonna have to work around that in order to just keep going anyway. All right, that's, I think we can go on from the schedule of future meetings.
Yeah.
Let's go down to the governance documents review. We may not make a whole lot of progress on this. Camilla, you and I had an email conversation on those, the initial ones at the top of the agenda, the B7, FO23, M05, and M07. You had expressed some frustration in getting some feedback from those that need to comment on that. Is that still where we're at?
That is still where we are. I have made emails, I copied you on those emails. I have made personal phone calls. Everyone is just so busy with family visiting and everything else over the summer. They have pleaded guilt. They'll get them to me, but I've heard that for about a month now.
Okay, well, I understand all that. What my concern is that these go beyond just sending out to, for example, a committee chair, please look at your resolution and does it fit what you're doing? And it does or it doesn't kind of correspondence. In each of these, there's a question been raised, one or more questions been raised about, hey, is this really what's going on, or is this what's supposed to be going on, or are you concerned? Should there not be concern about something? They aren't just, please look at it and make sure it's serving its purpose kind of thing. In each of those resolutions, there's been something raised for concern to one degree or another. And that's the concern there. It would be one thing in some cases we can just say, well, okay, nobody's interested in making a response. They must be happy. Those didn't really apply to most of those resolutions. That's the only, that's the only thing only comment I want to say on that. And then let's just leave it at that. On C06, and I'm trying to find my copy here. That's the Communications Advisory Committee. Bob, on that one, the Communications Advisory Committee chair has communicated to me that they do in fact want to make a revision to their resolution and how to go about that. And I said, you don't have to come through us. What you should do is have a red line submitted to the board of directors. I think I also referenced B01 in my communication. But at any rate, the status on that is that they are either preparing or have prepared a red line for consideration by the board. Now, I don't know that it had been ready for the last board meeting. We'll just have to see what happens in future board meetings. If it doesn't come up for first reading soon, then we're going to have to go back and find out, exactly where they are. But they have been indicating that they are working on that resolution.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, Jim, what resolution was that the addition that came about as a referendum?
No, that, I don't know what this was. What I'm talking about is the Communications Advisory Committee C06. That's their responsibilities, and I don't know what they want to revise. I just know they want to revise their resolution, but it had nothing. I don't know that it has anything to do with petitions, though.
Okay,
I'm sorry, go ahead. B07 does have to do with petitions. That's the question there is, we've been through a petition to referendum and there's been problems. Does that resolution need to be revised in some manner?
okay.
That's the issue with that one in particular. I've distributed not too long ago the report on F-04. That's the delinquency review that's included in resolution F-04. The committee designated in that resolution met, and a report was issued, and I distributed it to you. That was our concern with that resolution, that we've gone a couple of years or so at least, and there had never been a report issued. Now, a report has been issued, and I think that probably can be removed from it. I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at it or at all. It reports the delinquency status and makes a statement that the process of handling delinquencies is working satisfactorily, and there's no indication of changes to be made.
So are we going to, their next review is due June 21, which is this month.
I think you can extend it 2 more years from now.
2 more years, okay.
Yeah, the report was the report I think may have been May. Why don't you put it May 21 reviewed, and next one May 23.
Okay.
I'm thinking it's said May, but it may have been April.
I'm looking, hold on. I had the report in front of me. Yeah, it was actually sent in March.
Okay, let's make it March 21 and March 23.
Yeah, March, and then there's a May. Let's use the May date.
Okay.
Because that was when it came to you. It was finished at that point and then forwarded to you in May.
Yeah, that's good.
So we use the May. Okay. May 21 and May 23.
All right, let's, again, we're running along here. Let's kind of go again quickly through this, and if everybody can kind of follow along here.
B7, if you want to start at the top.
Yeah, let's go back to the very top. We need to change the bylaws of all things. The last review date can be the release date of the bylaws. I think is that May 14th. I don't have it in front of me. And the scheduled review date can still be to be determined. I think you put a note in there that it's, there was a revision to the bylaws effective, whatever, May 14th, and change the date to May 14th to 2021.
Which number are you talking now?
The bylaws.
Okay, the bylaws themselves.
Yeah.
Okay,
We need to recognize that they've been revised.
on May 21?
Yeah.
May 14th is the correct date.
All right, we're just using month and year. Actually, there's going to be, what we are in fact working on is
Yeah.
a revision of the bylaws. So you could put a note in there that there's an ongoing review of the bylaws by the committee. That can be put in there.
Okay,
And I'm going to down in the Bs. B08 can be shown as rescinded. That was rescinded at the last board meeting, June, whatever the date was. I don't remember the date.
okay. I'll get the date, no problem.
Kind of working up from the bottom up, the B07 remains the same. Now, B02 through B06, we need to hold off on those. They're all, of course, well overdue, but we're already looking for input on B07 and struggling to get that. I think we just leave that note as it is. It says other B series resolutions noted below. Well, the one noted below will now be B07. We just leave it that way.
Okay, leave B07 like it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
So CO1 and 2 are okay. C20 is the same thing as it is.
how did you get, you're gonna leave C3, the others the same as they are?
These leave C3 the same.
Okay,
C04 is the same.
same, okay.
Skip 5 because it's no longer 6.
I got the notes for that.
Okay. Where am I now? 7. I have to.
You're at 8,
I haven't followed up on that yet.
okay.
Okay. C08 stays the same because that waits till their election report.
That's the one we just got the election report from, right?
No, that's
No,
the search
no, no.
committee. So
That's
that's the search committee.
Okay,
Executive council's not due. I need to still follow up on 10 and 11. Okay, 10, 11, 10. I need to follow up on 12. I'm sorry, not 11.
yeah, 12, 11's okay, 12 is follow-up.
12 and 13. I have work to do.
Okay,
The racket sports committee, we've been kind of holding on that because of the committee starting up again and had a to be determined date. That committee seems to be, I've read through the minutes of that committee. They seem to be doing a pretty thorough job, and it's not my position to judge that, and I'm not doing that. I'm just observing that committee seems to be working pretty hard.
okay,
I think what we can do is take the to be determined off of that and just put December 2022 on it, and take the notes off.
Jim,
Yeah.
if I may, board advisor to that as well. and they are working very, very hard. They've had some exciting functions, and we'll have a day at Wimbledon this coming Saturday. So it's working really well. Thank you.
And I, as I said, I read through their recent minutes, and they, as you indicate, they appear to be working pretty hard at what they're doing, and on these wait and see kind of note, and the to determine can be taken off of there. Aquatics, there aren't any recent minutes, but there are news articles that indicate they're at work. So I need to send out and ask them to look at their resolution. They haven't been perhaps in operation. I kind of think the committee may have gone through some not reorganization, maybe new people. It's timely for us to catch up with that one. I'll send something out to them.
Okay, I got that.
Let's hold off on F01. That's
Okay.
overdue, but the next, we're taking F04 off, and we can, as I said, we can extend that out.
Okay.
2 and 3, we're waiting for, that's the ones that Camilla is working on that can stay the way it is.
Okay.
Down to M01. The compliance situation, I don't believe that's changed. Again, that's the provision in there that it goes, that compliance, non-compliance goes from the art committee, the general manager, to the attorney. And it's not been going that direction. It's been going the old, goes to the attorney to send a letter process. That's the old process, simply because of the status of the court system resulting from disruptions due to the delay due to the pandemic. And as far as I know, that continues to be the case. So just going to have to hold before we see that whether or not the compliance process is really going to work. We're okay on 2. We're okay on 4. 5 is with Camilla. 6, as far as I know, the ballots have already gone out or will go out. It's too late for any questions on what's being done about the making sure that there aren't duplicate ballots. We're just going to have to see what the process is this time.
I'll just leave the note there, Jim.
Yeah, and that's my fault. And M07.
Jim, I can give you just the very brief summary of that. The ballots are out with a property identifier at the bottom of each ballot. And during the course of the election, we will maintain a 12-hour hotline. So if people say they've lost their ballots or something else, we will record that so that we make sure we only get one ballot from household. And quite frequently, there are people who call and say, my husband voted, I didn't agree with his vote, I want my own ballot. The answer is no, only one ballot per household.
Okay. Camilla, the problem that occurred the last election on duplicate ballots is there's not any question about a valid way of doing that. The problem is that it's not done the way the procedure M06 says it to be done. Whatever works that's an acceptable way of doing it is fine, and not the decision of this committee. What this committee is interested in is that the resolution and what is being done match, and that we can keep that until we continue to get to the end of the election and the election report is prepared as required by M06. But those are the kinds of things that the elections committee needs to be alert to and understand where they're not meeting, where they're not doing something in the resolution, change the resolution.
Okay, that's, I will look into that.
Hey,
Uh,
real quick, just to clarify, ballots go out next week after the second candidate forum is held on Tuesday night.
Okay,
Just leave the notes there then, Jim.
yeah, just leave them there.
Okay, I'll take the yellow out and it'll just be notes.
That's good. And I'm not gonna leave M08 the way it is. Someday, eventually, we're gonna get to a point on our bylaws status list that where this may, and I don't say will, may come into play. And to just leave it there soon, but sooner or later that will be addressed, that we either make use of something like that or we don't have it, one or the other. That it's not gonna hurt anything to be there, but once again, it's something that's rapidly running out, or not rapidly, has been run out of date, needs to have been addressed before now, but just leave it there for the time being. M09, I almost forgot that. Leave that the same way. That's what we're doing.
Yep.
Folks, anybody got any further questions? I don't know. Is Greg Ellis still on here? I don't see him. Yes, he is. Greg Ellis. I'm
Yeah, he's
sorry,
on.
Greg. Greg, if you have any questions you want to ask, now's your time. Okay, I'm going to wish you a good weekend then, Greg. Anybody else have any other questions, comments, whatever, before we get on?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, Bob made a motion. Anybody second it?
Second.
Okay, Laura seconds it. All in favor, shout
Aye.
yes. Aye, okay. I'm going to say we're adjourned at 3:27. We'll see you all again soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
See you later.